Leaders hammer out a deal that could lead to Turkey joining the EU. Talks will begin next year as Europe debates whether to embrace its first Muslim member.
It shows that those who believe there is some fundamental clash of civilizations between Christian and Muslim are actually wrong, that we can work together, that we can cooperate together, and I think that is of fundamental importance.
Not everyone is happy, though. We'll be assessing the obstacles Turkey still faces. Also tonight, 30 years on, a final report says the Gaul was not deliberately sunk. Getting tough on Christmas binge drinking, but will on-the-spot fines work? And Flintoff on fire as England get off to a good start in the first test against South Africa.
In the northwest, should Salford be blacklisted by Europe? How a foreign government brands the city as too dangerous. And a former Guantanamo Bay detainee from Manchester tells of how he was abused by the Americans.
Good evening. Turkey has moved a step closer to becoming the first Muslim member of the European Union. At the end of a two-day summit in Brussels, EU leaders struck a deal to start membership talks next autumn. Turkey is still unhappy with some of the conditions, in particular a demand that it recognises the government of Cyprus. Many European countries are also wary, and the talks don't guarantee entry. But Tony Blair called the agreement a historic event, saying it showed that Christian and Muslim civilizations could work together. From Brussels, here's our Europe correspondent, Stephen Saka.
Late this afternoon, Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan got a round of applause from European leaders. The congratulations on a momentous deal that brings Turkey closer to EU membership were heartfelt. But this has been 24 hours of intense, sometimes rancorous diplomacy. 8 hours earlier, when Tony Blair arrived at the summit, an agreement was still in the balance. His role, diplomatic go-between, as the tension mounted. Outside the summit, hundreds of Armenians protested about what they call the Turkish genocide of their people 8 decades ago. Today, Turkey's past, present and future, all under the spotlight. In some countries, talk of Turkey in the EU is unpopular, a potential problem for Messrs. Chirac and Schroeder. That's why every word in the final accord was carefully nuanced. There were frantic phone calls, talk of possible walkouts, but in the end, there was a deal. And after all the arguments over the fine print, the final agreement means Turkey will soon update its customs accord with the EU to include Cyprus. But the Turks insist this will not constitute formal recognition of Cyprus. For existing EU members worried about immigration, there will be limits on the number of workers from Turkey allowed into EU member states. The talks, which start next October, will last at least 10 years, and there's no guarantee of membership at the end of the process. Tony Blair, the most ardent supporter of Turkey's case, emerged to hail a significant milestone for Europe.
The fact that Europe can welcome in Turkey and begin the process of negotiation for them to become a full member of the European Union is an historic event. It shows that those who believe there is some fundamental clash of civilizations between Christian and Muslim are actually wrong, that we can work together, that we can cooperate together, and I think that is of fundamental importance.
But there are Turco-skeptics too. Jacques Chirac knows 2/3 of French people oppose Turkish membership.
Turkey has invaded Cyprus.
The division of Cyprus after Turkey's invasion of the north of the island in 1974 remains a major stumbling block. The war, with its casualties, many tens of thousands of refugees, generated long-lasting hatred. The UN still polices the island's buffer zone, a peace plan last year founded when Greek Cypriots rejected it. Today in Istanbul, Turks seemed reluctant to do what ultimately they will have to do, reconcile themselves with Greek Cypriots.
We lost many lives there. We shouldn't give it up easily. But I guess we can make some sacrifice in order to achieve certain things.
I don't think we should agree to recognise Greek Cyprus without being a full member, because I don't believe the European diplomats, once they get what they need from us, they will have all the cards.
Tonight, EU leaders left Brussels with many questions about Turkey's membership bid unresolved.
Okay, right. I think that's all it is.
But Tony Blair, for one, was satisfied. The British delegation well aware that no country that has begun membership talks with the EU has yet failed to get in.
Well, we can talk to Stephen Sackur in Brussels now. Stephen, Tony Blair hailing this as an historic agreement, but still lots of concern from within Europe itself.
Yes, Europe's divided on this issue, Darren, and I think it'll continue to be so for some time. If you look at opinion polls in France and Germany, you find many, many people who simply don't believe at this moment that Turkey should be in the European Union. They cite political reasons, cultural and religious reasons, and of course economic reasons as well, because there is at the moment a massive mismatch between the Turkish economy and those of most of the countries of the European Union. But I think the optimists, and of course Tony Blair would be in that camp, the optimists say, look, we now have 10 years to get the European public used to the idea of Turkey coming in. It can only be good for Europe to expand the area of peace and prosperity and democracy all the way to the Middle East, to the borders of Iraq, Iran and Syria. It's good for our long-term prospects. It'll certainly be good for Turkey. That case is going to have to be made not just by European leaders, also by the Turks themselves. They have an awful lot of work to do, a huge amount of work. I think most people think it won't be 10 years, it could be 15 before they stand a chance of membership. Nonetheless, this is a momentous moment, not just for the Turks, but for all Europeans.
All right, Stephen, thank you. A report on the loss of the hull trawler, the Gaul, more than 30 years ago, has concluded that it was not sunk deliberately. All 36 crewmen died when the Gaul went down off the Norwegian coast in 1974. The latest inquiry found the trawler sank because its hold became flooded in heavy seas. From Hull, Catherine Marsden reports.
Silent underwater pictures of the Gaul. For 30 years, she's lain at the bottom of the Barents Sea. These images were taken by mini-submarines sent down to help piece together what happened in February 1974. The Gaul was state-of-the-art, ahead of her time, so her disappearance was hard to believe. Today, families of those lost heard the stark findings of the inquiry. The vessel sank in high seas because 2 fishing hatches had been left open.
It is quite clear that the draft and offal chutes on board Gaul were seized in the open position. This reflects poorly on the maintenance and repair work performed by the owners and their staff.
But none of the families are convinced by this. The Gaul sank during the Cold War, and that's led to rumours of espionage and seizure by the Russians. Some believe she may even have been hit by a submarine. They're conspiracy theories that have rumbled on for 30 years. Today's report dismissed them all.
The wreck is in an intact condition. It has been possible to eliminate all those scenarios posed as possible causes of the loss that have been canvassed over the years, save one.
For the majority of the families, today just hasn't brought an end to 30 years of anguish. Many